My husband walked through our door on our 10th anniversary with another woman on his arm, introduced her as his business partner. That man had no idea I'd been 3 steps ahead of him for months. By morning, he'd realize he married the wrong one. Let me tell you how I took it all. Before I get into this story, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell, because what I'm about to tell you, you're going to want to share this with every woman you know. Trust me on that. Now, let me take you back to where it all started. My name is Gabrielle Monroe, and up until 10 months ago, I thought I had it all figured out. I'm a corporate attorney, made junior partner at one of Atlanta's most prestigious law firms before I turned 35. My husband, Trevor, he's a real estate billionaire, self-made, or so he loved to tell people. We had the mansion in Buckhead, the vacation home in Martha's Vineyard, cars that cost more than most people's houses. On paper, we were living the dream. 10 years of marriage, no kids. That was by choice, both of ours. And 2 successful careers that somehow never seemed to clash. I thought we had balance. I thought we had respect. I thought I knew my husband. But let me tell you something about being a black woman in corporate America, in marriage, in life. We learn to read rooms. We learn to notice when something's off. It's survival. So when Trevor started changing about 6 months before our anniversary, I noticed. The late-night conference calls that required him to take them in his car. The weekend site visits that seemed to multiply. The new cologne. The extra trips to the gym. The way he'd angle his phone away from me when texting. These weren't dramatic changes. They were subtle. The kind of things you could convince yourself you're imagining if you wanted to stay comfortable. But I've never been the type to choose comfort over truth. My best friend Rochelle noticed it too. We were having brunch one Sunday. Trevor was supposedly at a property showing, and she looked at me over her mimosa and said, "Girl, you know what this looks like, right?" I wanted to tell her she was wrong. I wanted to defend my marriage, my husband, my life. But I'm a lawyer. I deal in evidence, not emotions. And the evidence was pointing in one direction. So 3 months before our 10th anniversary, I hired a private investigator. Not some TV movie detective, but a real professional. A woman, actually, who specialized in marital investigations. Her name was Christine, and she was expensive, discreet, and brutally efficient. I gave her 2 weeks to find whatever there was to find. She called me in 5 days. Her name was Nicole, 26 years old, aspiring influencer, blonde hair, blue eyes, the whole cliché. Trevor had set her up in a luxury apartment in Midtown, paid for her Range Rover, monthly allowance of $15,000. Christine had photos, videos, bank transfers, hotel receipts, restaurant reservations. She even had screenshots of their text messages. Apparently Trevor wasn't smart enough to use a burner phone. Reading those messages felt like swallowing glass. The pet names, the promises, the way he talked to her like I didn't exist. I sat in my car in the parking garage of my law firm for 2 hours after that meeting with Christine, just staring at those photos. I cried. I'm not going to lie and pretend I was some ice queen from the start. I cried hard. 10 years of my life. 10 years of building something with someone who was building a whole separate life behind my back. The betrayal burned. But here's the thing about fire. It doesn't just destroy. It also refines. After those 2 hours, I dried my face, fixed my makeup, and went back to my office. I didn't go home and scream. I didn't confront him. I didn't throw his clothes out on the lawn or slash his tires. I did what I do best. I built a case. Because I realized something sitting in that parking garage. I wasn't just Gabrielle, the betrayed wife. I was Gabrielle Monroe, attorney at law, and I was about to represent the most important client I'd ever have. Myself. The next morning, I called my mentor, Diane. She's one of the best divorce attorneys in Georgia, been practicing for 30 years, and she's seen it all. I told her everything over coffee at her office. She listened, didn't interrupt, and when I finished, she smiled. Not a happy smile, but the smile of someone who knows exactly what move to make next. She said, "Gabrielle, you have options most women only dream about. You have money, education, connections, and most importantly, you have time. He doesn't know you know. That's your advantage." We spent the next 3 hours reviewing my assets, not just mine and Trevor's together. But everything. The properties in Georgia, Florida, New York, and California. His business holdings, investment portfolios, the stocks, the bonds, the offshore accounts I'd heard him mention but never really paid attention to. That was my first mistake in this marriage. I'd been so focused on my own career that I'd let him handle the finances. I trusted him. That trust was about to cost him everything. Diane walked me through the prenup Trevor had insisted on before we got married. At the time, I'd signed it without much thought. I was in love, and I was making my own money. The prenup said that in case of divorce, we'd each keep what we brought into the marriage plus whatever we earned individually during it. Joint assets would be split 50-50. It seemed fair then, but Diane pointed out something interesting. The prenup had an infidelity clause. If either party committed adultery, the clause became void, and the injured party was entitled to a larger settlement. Trevor had insisted on that clause, probably thinking it protected him. He never imagined he'd be the one caught. But that wasn't even the best part. As I started going through our financial records, I had access to everything as his wife. I found some irregularities, money moving in strange patterns, large transfers to accounts I didn't recognize, business expenses that didn't make sense. My legal brain kicked in, and I started documenting everything. I'd come home from work, wait for Trevor to leave for one of his meetings, and I'd go through his home office like I was preparing for trial. What I found was bigger than just an affair. Trevor had been committing fraud. He was moving money from his real estate investment company, where he had partners and investors, into private accounts. He was inflating property values on paper, collecting investor money, then pocketing the difference. He was running what essentially amounted to a Ponzi scheme, using new investor money to pay returns to old investors while skimming off the top. The man I'd married wasn't just a cheater. He was a criminal. I copied everything: bank statements, emails, contracts, investment documents. I sent them to a secure cloud storage that only I could access. I opened new bank accounts in just my name and started moving my personal money, every paycheck, every bonus, into accounts he couldn't touch. I met with Diane twice a week, building our strategy like we were preparing for the trial of the century. And then I did something that surprised even me. I decided to let him think he was winning. For the next 2 months, I played the perfect wife. I smiled. I asked about his day. I initiated intimacy. I planned our anniversary dinner. I watched him lie to my face with his mistress's perfume still on his collar, and I smiled, because I knew something he didn't. I was in control now. About a week before our anniversary, Christine called me with interesting information. Trevor was planning something big. He'd made reservations at the apartment he was keeping Nicole in for our anniversary night. He was going to tell me he had a business emergency, leave me alone on our anniversary, and spend the night with her. But then something changed. He canceled those reservations and made new plans. He was going to bring her to our house, to introduce her to me as his new business partner, and test the waters for what I can only assume was his eventual plan to leave me for her. The audacity. The sheer, breathtaking audacity of this man. When Diane told me about it, I actually laughed. I laughed so hard I cried, because he'd just handed me the final piece I needed: witnesses to his affair in our marital home, on our anniversary, with evidence I could use in court. Trevor always did have a flair for the dramatic. He just never realized he was setting his own stage for destruction. I planned that anniversary dinner down to the last detail. I had the house cleaned, hired a chef to prepare an elaborate meal, bought a new dress, something stunning and powerful. I set up small cameras in the living room, dining room, and foyer. Not hidden exactly, but subtle enough that Trevor wouldn't notice. I documented everything because that's what lawyers do. We build irrefutable cases. I told Diane to come by at exactly 8:30 that evening. Just a casual drop-in from a colleague, I said. She understood immediately. I was setting a trap, and every piece had to be in place. Anniversary day arrived. I took the day off work, got my hair done, my nails done. I came home and slipped into that dress, a deep emerald green that looked incredible against my skin. I looked at myself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman staring back. She looked powerful, dangerous, ready. Trevor came home at 7. I heard his car in the driveway and took a deep breath. This was it. I walked down the stairs just as he opened the front door, and there she was. Nicole, hanging on his arm like she belonged there, like this was normal. She looked nervous. He looked cocky. That should have been my first clue that he had no idea what was coming. "Gabrielle," he said, kissing my cheek like nothing was wrong. "I hope you don't mind, but I invited my new business partner to join us for dinner. This is Nicole. We're working on a huge development project together, and I thought it would be great for you two to meet." I looked at Nicole, really looked at her. She was pretty, I'll give her that. Young, definitely. Scared, absolutely. She knew this was wrong. She just didn't know how wrong. I smiled, that same smile I use in court when opposing counsel walks into my trap, and extended my hand. "Nicole, what a lovely surprise. Please come in. I've had dinner prepared, and there's more than enough for 3. Trevor relaxed. He actually thought I was buying this. Nicole looked confused but relieved. They followed me into the dining room where the table was set beautifully. I poured wine, served food, made small talk. I asked Nicole about her background, her interests, her business experience. She stumbled through answers, clearly uncomfortable. Trevor kept trying to steer the conversation, to maintain control. I let him think he had it. Then, about halfway through dinner, I started asking questions, casual ones at first, about their business project, about the financing, about the investors. I watched Trevor's face start to change as he realized I was asking questions I shouldn't know to ask. Questions that showed I understood more about his business than he thought. "You know, Trevor," I said, refilling my wine glass, "I've been doing some reading about real estate investment structures." "Fascinating stuff, especially offshore investment vehicles. You use those, don't you, for the project you and Nicole are working on?" His hand tightened on his fork. Nicole looked between us, clearly lost. "Gabrielle, that's pretty technical stuff. I didn't know you were interested in—" "Oh, I'm interested in a lot of things," I interrupted. "I'm interested in SEC regulations, in investor protection laws, in what happens when someone misrepresents property values to secure funding. Very interested in that." The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" The doorbell rang. Perfect timing. I stood up, smoothing my dress. "That'll be Diane. I invited her to stop by for drinks. You remember Diane, don't you, Trevor? My mentor? One of the best divorce attorneys in the state?" I walked to the door and let Diane in. She looked perfect, professional, powerful, carrying her briefcase like a weapon. We walked back into the dining room together, and I could see Trevor starting to panic. Nicole looked like she wanted to disappear. "Actually," I said, sitting back down, "let's stop pretending. Nicole, sweetheart, you're not his business partner. You're his mistress. He's been paying for your apartment, your car, giving you $15,000 a month. I have the bank records to prove it. Trevor, you can stop with the act, too. I know everything. I've known for 3 months. The room went dead silent. Trevor's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Nicole's eyes filled with tears. I pulled out my tablet and started swiping through photos. Trevor and Nicole at restaurants, at hotels, at her apartment, text messages, bank transfers, everything. "Here's what's going to happen," I continued, my voice steady and cold. "Trevor, you're going to sign these divorce papers that cite adultery and fraud. Yes, fraud. Because while I was investigating your affair, I found something much more interesting. You've been embezzling from your own company, moving investor money into private accounts, inflating property values, running what basically amounts to a Ponzi scheme. I have evidence of everything, emails, contracts, bank statements, everything. I've already sent copies to the SEC, the IRS, and your business partners." Trevor stood up so fast his chair fell backward. "You can't, this is, Gabrielle, you don't understand?" "Oh, I understand perfectly," I said. "I understand that you violated our prenup's infidelity clause, which means you get nothing. I understand that you committed multiple federal crimes, which means you're going to prison. I understand that by morning, your assets will be frozen, your business partners will be filing lawsuits, and your investors will be demanding their money back. I also understand that I made you sign a postnuptial agreement 8 months ago after that charity gala where you got drunk. Remember? You thought it was just updating our beneficiary information. It wasn't. It protected me from your business liabilities and gave me rights to liquidate joint assets if you were ever charged with a crime. My lawyer got it notarized while you were passed out on the couch. Nicole jumped up. I didn't know he was married. I swear, I didn't. Save it, I said. You're on camera right now, in my house, on my anniversary, with my husband. You're part of this now. I suggest you leave before the police arrive, which, I checked my watch, should be in about 15 minutes. I filed the reports this afternoon. She ran, literally grabbed her purse and ran out of my house. Trevor collapsed back into his chair, his face in his hands. His phone started ringing. Then it rang again, and again. His business partners, I assumed, getting the evidence I'd sent them. His world was crumbling in real time, and I sat there watching with the same calm I bring to closing arguments. Gabriel, please, he said, and I heard something I'd never heard in his voice before. Fear. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. I'll end things with Nicole. I'll fix the business issues. Please don't do this. I stood up, walked over to where he sat, and looked down at him. This man I'd loved for 10 years. This man I'd built a life with. This man who'd thrown it all away because he thought he could have everything, and I'd never be smart enough to notice. You brought your mistress into our home on our anniversary, I said quietly. You stole from your investors. You lied to me for months. You made me look like a fool. But the biggest mistake you made, Trevor? You underestimated me. You forgot that I'm not just your wife. I'm an attorney. I'm a black woman who's had to be twice as smart and 3 times as prepared my entire life just to get half the respect you got handed. You thought I was too busy, too trusting, too in love to notice. You were wrong. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They arrested him in our dining room for fraud, embezzlement, and securities violations. The FBI would come for him the next day for the federal charges. I watched them put handcuffs on him, read him his rights, walk him out of the house we'd shared. Diane stood beside me, her hand on my shoulder. You did good, she said quietly. I nodded. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel happy. But I felt something more important. I felt free. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. With the infidelity clause and his criminal charges, I got the house, 70% of our liquid assets, and 3 of our 4 properties. His business partners bought me out of his company at a premium to avoid being associated with his fraud. Nicole disappeared from social media completely. Trevor's mother called me once, screaming about how I'd destroyed her son's life. I listened for 5 minutes, then hung up. I didn't block her number. I just never answered again. 6 months after that anniversary dinner, I made senior partner at my firm. I sold the Buckhead mansion, too many memories, and bought a beautiful penthouse downtown with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the whole city. I started a foundation for women escaping financial abuse in marriages, teaching them how to protect themselves, document everything, and build their own cases. Rochelle still tells me, I told you so at least once a week, but I don't mind. She was right. I'm even dating again. His name is Dr. Andrew Clark. He teaches African American literature at Spelman College, and he's nothing like Trevor. He's kind. He's genuine. He makes me laugh. He knows my story, and he's never once made me feel like I should have handled it differently. Last week, he brought me flowers just because it was Tuesday. Imagine that. Flowers on a Tuesday, for no reason except that he was thinking of me. Sometimes people ask me if I regret how I handled things. If I wish I'd confronted Trevor the moment I found out, screamed and cried and gotten it all out. The answer is no, because that's not who I am. I'm strategic. I'm patient. I'm thorough. And when someone betrays me, I don't just walk away. I make sure they understand exactly what they lost and exactly why they'll never recover from losing it. Trevor's serving 8 years in federal prison. Nicole moved back to wherever she came from. His business partners rebuilt the company without him. His investors got most of their money back through bankruptcy proceedings. And me? I'm thriving. I'm successful. I'm happy. I'm free. That's my story. That's how I went from devastated to liberated in one night. If this resonated with you, hit that like button. Drop a comment telling me, would you have confronted him immediately or played the long game like I did? Subscribe because I've got more stories about women who refuse to be played. And remember, always protect yourself, your assets, and your peace. Trust your instincts. Document everything. And never ever let anyone think you're less intelligent than you are. I'll see you in the next one.